So today we're diving deep into the perpetual traveler,
PT.
PT, right, and the five flag theory. And then there's this really interesting question. Is the Bitcoin way like a modern version of these ideas for today's crazy world?
Yeah, it's a fascinating link, right? I mean, PT and the five flag theory, they're kind of all about maximizing personal freedom and financial independence.
By basically spreading your life across different countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that thinking comes from Harry Schultz and Dr. W.G. Hill.
So Schultz, he was this financial guy back in the 70s, and he kind of started this whole thing with what he called three flags, like separating your life into three different places. One for your identity.
Like a second passport.
Right. One for keeping your money safe, and another for your, like, tax stuff. Pretty wild idea back then.
Oh, totally. And then Dr. Hill came along and developed it into this whole lifestyle philosophy.
Which is all laid out in his book from '85, right?
Yep, the first definitive book on the whole PT lifestyle. And you know what's cool? The guys who made that YouTube video, PT Flag Theory, Simplified for Gen Z, they actually say his book is like the foundation of it all.
So it's not just about passports and taxes anymore, huh?
Nope. That video explains it really well. It's about being a global citizen.
Hmm?
You know, using different countries for residency, banking, business, like optimizing everything for freedom and, of course, your finances. They call it choosing where you're treated best, which makes a lot of sense, especially for, digital nomads and all those folks.
Choose where you're treated best. I love that. But let's be real, the world today. Bitcoin self-sovereignty says things have gotten a bit less stable, especially since we moved away from the gold standard.
Yeah, they don't sugarcoat it, do they? That guide paints a pretty concerning picture, like a decline in a bunch of areas since the early 70s. Food safety, education quality, cost of living, even free speech, it all points to a more chaotic world.
Right, and it makes you think, in this kind of environment, a digital and financial plan B isn't just smart, it's almost like a necessity.
Exactly. Having that plan B, another place to live, or just more control over your life is all about feeling safe and free, when things are uncertain.
So in this deep dive, we're going to break down the PT and five flag theory and see how they connect with the Bitcoin way, especially when it comes to like self-sovereignty and financial independence.
Right. We want to understand why people seek out these alternative lifestyles and explore the parallels with, self-sovereignty in our digital world.
Okay, so let's start with the why. Why would someone even want this kind of lifestyle? Bitcoin self-sovereignty describes the world since the 70s as objectively more chaotic. They point to problems with food, free speech, even the constant threat of war. It's pretty intense.
It is. And it kind of reflects the concerns behind the original PT philosophy, right?
Yeah.
The PT.PDF talks about governments meddling in everything, huge taxes, and, just limitations on freedom.
Not to mention the constant erosion of privacy.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how much the PT philosophy emphasizes individualism. Like they actually question putting the group first all the time. Instead, they advocate for well-considered self-interest as a rational response to these pressures.
It's not just about avoiding taxes either. They even talk about not wanting to be a draftee to be sacrificed as cannon fodder. That's heavy stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's about having control over your destiny, not being a pawn in someone else's game. And this ties in perfectly with the Plan B idea in Bitcoin self-sovereignty.
Having options, right? A safety net for your freedom and security, whether that's a backup country or just more control over your own life.
Exactly. And, Tony Asbeck's story about Lebanon's financial collapse, that really brings it home. He talks about it in From Fiat Collapse to Bitcoin Redemption.
Oh, yeah. His account is pretty wild. Everything just went poof, like overnight. Banks, food, the whole system.
It shows you how fragile our systems are, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't even get basic necessities, and even relationships started falling apart.
It's crazy how fast things can change. And that's exactly why having some self-reliance is so crucial.
Totally. It makes the whole PT philosophy and the Plan B mindset seem less like, a luxury and more like a necessity in today's world.
Okay, so let's dive into the first flag, residency or citizenship. Basically having the ability to relocate. The PT concept is all about having that second passport, right? For freedom of movement and options when things go south.
Exactly. Both PT.PDF and the perpetual traveler and flag theory emphasize this. It's all about optionality.
But Bitcoin self-sovereignty says getting a second citizenship, or what they call buying a passport, used to be a rich person's game, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right, a huge barrier for most people. So they proposed Plan B residency programs, as a more affordable way to get that optionality.
So instead of dropping a fortune on a passport, you go for residency, which is supposedly much easier and cheaper.
And it still comes with some major benefits, like the freedom to come and go as you please, and importantly, not paying taxes on income you earn outside the country.
That's a big deal for people working internationally. And guess what? The Bitcoin Way is actually offering something like this. They have a residency program in Panama.
Yep, Panama. They describe it as a safe, freedom-loving country, and their team there actually helps you through all the bureaucratic stuff.
It's like they're making that first step towards global mobility less intimidating, giving you that peace of mind, knowing you have a backup plan.
Exactly. It's that crucial first step, being able to physically relocate if needed. A real escape route from, instability or whatever you want to avoid.
Makes sense. Okay, on to flag 2. Assets, securing your wealth. The PT principle here is about keeping your assets outside your home country, protecting them from government, lawsuits, economic problems. And PT.PDF puts it perfectly. It's a lot easier to make money than it is to keep it.
So true, right. They understood the risks of keeping all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, especially in your home country where you're under their laws and rules.
And this connects directly with the Bitcoin way, right? Their whole thing in Bitcoin self-sovereignty is that the foundation of self-sovereignty begins with your financial life.
Bitcoin in proper 100% self-custody.
Yeah, self-custody, that seems to be their big thing. And remember Tony Yazbek, in his interview, he was adamant about not trusting third parties with your money, not even banks.
His experience in Lebanon taught him that the hard way. Banks can be unreliable, especially when connected to a failing system.
Yeah, he really makes you question the stability of those traditional systems. Your money's not really yours if it's sitting in someone else's account, is it?
And that's where Bitcoin in self-custody comes in. The Bitcoin way sees it as taking personal responsibility for your wealth, no more relying on middlemen.
You hold your own keys, right? Like having the password to your digital vault.
Exactly. They talk about permissionless transactions, regardless of the amount. No stress, just total control over your finances.
Yeah.
It mirrors the PT's idea of putting your assets out of reach, but instead of offshore banks, it's about securing your Bitcoin through self-custody.
So flag 2 today is less about physical offshore banking and more about taking control of your Bitcoin.
Outside the traditional system.
Yes. Taking ownership of your financial security, which is basically the heart of both PT and the Bitcoin way.
Totally.
All right, next up, flag 3. Legal address, minimizing taxation. The PT goal here is to have a legal address in a tax haven, to really reduce or even eliminate income taxes.
So they can, as the perpetual traveler in flag theory says, enjoy 100% of the fruits of his work. Sounds nice, doesn't it?
It does. So in the PT.PDF, they explain that it's about strategically managing your physical presence, right? Avoiding staying in any one place long enough to get hit with those high taxes.
Yeah, like spend as much time as they like in tax-friendly places without triggering residency. It's interesting, right? Residency, flag 1, gives you the right to live somewhere and maybe lower taxes on foreign income.
But a legal address in a tax haven is specifically for minimizing tax obligations no matter where you actually are.
Exactly. They detach their physical presence from their legal and tax stuff.
Clever. They're like masters of their own tax destiny, right?
Haha. Well, within the law, of course. But it's all about autonomy, right? Now, Bitcoin self-sovereignty doesn't really talk about tax haven addresses specifically, but how does this concept fit in with what they're saying?
Good question. They don't get into the nitty-gritty of addresses, but it does align with the whole financial self-determination thing.
Right. By choosing residency in certain places, like Panama, people might naturally end up paying lower taxes overall, like Bitcoin self-sovereignty promotes.
So maybe, instead of hunting for tax haven addresses, the Bitcoin way is more about achieving a similar outcome indirectly through residency.
It's a possibility, right? Ultimately, it's about financial autonomy, and taxes are a big part of that.
For sure. Okay, moving on to flag 4, business. Generating income that's not tied to a location. The PT theory started with having a business base, but now it's all about being location independent, right?
Exactly. That's what the perpetual traveler in flag theory says, too. Being able to earn remotely is crucial for the PT lifestyle.
And in PT.PDF, they actually suggest becoming a consultant with specialized skills, offering your expertise across borders. That portable skill set gives you income flexibility.
And here's where the connection with the Bitcoin way gets really interesting. Imagine mastering Bitcoin. That's a super valuable skill set in the digital world, and you can do it from anywhere.
Totally. Bitcoin education, security guidance, self-custody help, those are needed everywhere. So if Flag 2 is securing your financial assets, is sovereign computing basically the digital equivalent?
You mean securing your data and digital identity, like how PTs want to keep their assets away from governments?
Exactly.
I like that. It's like digital diversification. Taking control of your data and online presence, just like the PT, geographically diversifies their assets.
And it's all about personal responsibility, just like self-custody for Bitcoin. Love, sovereign money. Try sovereign computing talks about creating your own clouds instead of relying on those big, vulnerable, centralized services.
That's a fantastic point. It all ties together, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And, that focus on personal responsibility is huge in the PT philosophy, too. Both approaches require individuals to be proactive, informed, and, take charge.
Yep. It's about empowering people to navigate this crazy world with more control and agency.
That's
All right, last but not least, Flag 5, playground. All about quality of life. PTs need places to relax and enjoy themselves. And, funnily enough, pt.pdf mentions having multiple playgrounds can help you avoid those pesky tax residency rules.
Quality of life is key here.
Yeah.
PTs look for places that suit them, whether it's the climate, the culture, whatever they're into.
They're not stuck in one place, right? They can choose where they spend their time, places that make them happy, and offer the lifestyle they want.
Exactly. And having multiple playgrounds is practical, too. It helps them avoid staying in one place for too long and, triggering those tax residency rules.
Smart. So the Bitcoin way doesn't tell you where to go on vacation, but how does this idea fit into their overall philosophy?
Well, they may not hand out travel brochures, but their focus on freedom and flexibility definitely supports the idea of choosing where you want to live and spend your time.
It's like once you have that financial sovereignty through Bitcoin and maybe a Plan B residency, you can prioritize quality of life. Choose your own playgrounds.
Absolutely. The Bitcoin way gives you that foundation, financial and digital autonomy, so you can focus on your well-being and your environment.
So the traditional PT model is all about physically diversifying across countries for all 5 flags, leisure included. But the Bitcoin way seems to offer a way to achieve those same goals in this digital age, right?
It's like a modern adaptation, isn't it? The Bitcoin way, with its focus on digital and financial self-sovereignty, provides the tools and strategies for people to take back control, especially in this increasingly digital world.
And for today's digitally native folks, the Bitcoin way might be a path to self-sovereignty that doesn't necessarily need physical relocation, although, it doesn't exclude it either. And they say it themselves on their website under Our Approach. If your goal is to regain control of your life and achieve true self-sovereignty, look no further than the Bitcoin way.
That sums it up perfectly. It's not just about physical diversification anymore. It's about using digital tools for greater autonomy. Bitcoin for financial sovereignty, and as that article Love Sovereign Money, try sovereign computing suggests. Sovereign computing for, digital sovereignty.
You take responsibility for your data just like you take responsibility for your Bitcoin and self-custody.
It's pretty powerful, right?
Yeah, and it's another strong parallel with the PT philosophy. It's all about being proactive, informed, and taking charge of your own life and security.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, right? Empowerment. Giving people the tools and knowledge to create the life they want.
So, to wrap things up, we've seen some pretty fascinating connections between the perpetual traveler, the 5-flag theory, and the Bitcoin way. At their core, they're all about seeking greater freedom, flexibility, and security, especially in a world that feels, well, kind of unpredictable at times.
And even though their methods are different, one focusing on physical diversification, the other on digital and financial self-sovereignty, the underlying desire for control is the same.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How can these principles of self-sovereignty, whether through physical relocation or digital empowerment, help us navigate the 21st century?
That's the question, right? Which aspects of the PT5 flag theory and the Bitcoin way resonate with you? What steps can you take to boost your own sovereignty in this digital world?
Lots to ponder. And if you're intrigued by all this, I definitely recommend checking out the sources we talked about today: Bitcoin self-sovereignty, the original pt.pdf, and of course, everything on the Bitcoin way. It's a great starting point for your journey towards self-reliance and freedom.
Couldn't agree more.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay sovereign.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.